Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
Well, we actually started just by coming up with the technology, and we were like, we'll figure out where we put this later, which was a very hard problem to tackle because we ended up spending 6 months before we jumped in full-time into this, validating that there is a market here, and we were basically a solution in search of a problem.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. This is Wednesday, and that makes all of this the Pitchwerks podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. We do appreciate your devoted support. Well, that's those of you that are subscribed, and I'm here to tell you this week we've got a really good reason for you to subscribe because once again we're going to prove to you that we're trying to bring value. Our guest is Tomer Borenstein. Okay, that's a reasonable facsimile of the actual pronunciation of the poor man's name, but he's with a company called Blastpoint. He's the CTO over there, and we're going to talk data, and we're going to talk about what you should have been doing with data when you were, phoning it in, doing your Wikipedia / Google dance, trying to, fill up your slides with what's your addressable market. Yes, I have been peering in your windows, and I love what you did with the furniture. Before we get started, I need to remind you that all of this is powered by your attention. People find this show through ratings and reviews. The only way that we can expand is if other people tell them that they should check us out. So give us a rating, give us a review. Do that in iTunes. I'll be your friend for a really long time. Let's talk to Tomer. Let's find out about Blastpoint, and I promise you, not only is he making, and it's not just Tomer, it's Allison, it's the whole team over there at Blastpoint is making this easy. It's part of their mission to make it easy for you, but it's affordable too. And if you listen to the end of our interview today, you're going to find out he's making it even more affordable than that. So let's talk to Tomer. All right. So unfortunately, I'm never going to say this right because I'm an American, and I accept my limitations, common as they may be. Tomer Borenstein. Did I say the S in that correctly?
It's actually not bad.
Come on, say it for me.
It's Tomer Borenstein, but even my wife doesn't get it right.
I know, but I want to get it right. I kind of pride myself on verbal skill. Give it to me one more time.
Tomer Borenstein.
Damn it.
You have to do it with an Israeli accent. And my Israeli accent is so screwed up by this point that I'm probably not saying it right either.
You said you lived in Thailand before you started recording.
Yeah.
How long did you spend there?
I was there from when I was 13 until I was 19.
Oh, wow. That probably did a number on your accent.
Yeah, it totally did.
Those are formative years.
Definitely. So I can say I grew up in Israel. I grew up in Thailand. Then I came here for Carnegie Mellon.
So I'm just going to call you Tomer like everyone else our, sort of like linguistically challenged region has been doing it. And I apologize profusely for my inability to keep up.
No worries. All is forgiven.
But you got cool stuff going on. Your company, Blastpoint, actually, a lot of people need to know about what you're working on. I would like to take a shot at this, and then I want you to correct what I say, right?
Sure.
Blastpoint makes big data analytics accessible to people that don't have the budget for the normal big server rack and, army of data scientists that, someone like a Fortune 500 company, that would be their expenditure. So It's down to something like $100 a month for a startup to all of a sudden have this army of resources. Is that about right?
Yeah. So there's it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but of
course it is.
That's the gist of it.
I'm half an idiot, man. The fact that sentence made sense in context, I'm marking the board.
It was a coherent sentence. That's all we can ask.
I can't even say your name.
So basically what we do is we deal specifically with geospatial data. So our team has had experience of building big data tools for Fortune 5,000 companies. We noticed that those companies would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for the tools that we were making. Those tools would be used by teams of data scientists that also cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the data itself would also cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we noticed that there was nothing comparable for regular people who are small business owners, who are nonprofits, or just any organization that just can't afford to hire the data expertise. So we focus on geospatial data, which means
I'm going to throw up the T because you just covered a lot there,
All
right? I'm going to throw up the NFL signal timeout, right? So the first bit is there's 3 elements that you just talked about people would typically have to buy. One is data, and I assume the hardware to run the data, right? The second is the team that can operate that solution and the hardware and all that. And then the third bit is the actual data going into this sort of department that you're building for this analysis.
Yep.
Now you say geospatial. Can you just sort of back up a little bit and just make sure everybody's talking the same language here? You're talking about strictly...
It's data about places.
About places.
Yeah, it's very simple. As long as the data can be tied to a particular place in the physical world, we can handle it.
Okay.
So, for example, that can be, how many people are employed in a certain neighborhood? How much do people spend on gum in a different city? Or what are the housing prices in, a different city?
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I can understand why people would want to know that. If I were, I don't know, okay, so here's an example. We had Christine Ixick, who is the co-founder of the Three Rivers Outdoor Company, come in. I can't even tell you how many episodes ago now because, frankly, I'm getting old. But she gave a tremendous explanation of this, I have to believe, largely manual process that she went through. She calls herself the GPS lady. She's got a knack for mapping and data, right? So she validated sort of the canned data that she was handed by going out and sort of like double checking everything and making sure that, she wanted to make sure that her business was successful. And it was a great episode for us because understanding that you don't just get to sort of throw out a shingle and hope for the best and have it work, right?
Right.
You can throw out a shingle anywhere. It's the having it work bit that's hard, right? But you're kind of automating that and in an affordable way. I mean, don't let me sell you short. I was looking at, it was blastpoint.io, I believe, where it was $90 to $120 on a monthly basis for people to have these tools.
So we actually started by using free and publicly available data that's just out there that is paid by all of our tax dollars. It's just that most people, don't know where to find it, and even if they do, they don't know what to do with it, because they lack the expertise. And that's not fair that all of us pay for this data, and it's just being used by the people who can afford to use it.
I did not expect this to take an angry populist turn, but I like it. Let's do this. All right, so who's collecting this data?
So we started with federal data because it is free and has nationwide coverage. So we can compare things like unemployment rates across any neighborhood in the entire United States.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
And as a business, I can think of 100 different ways that I would use that.
Yeah, which is
how
kind
many
of a problem
customers
for us.
are in this zip code. I'm going to put another location into this same town. Where should it be to reduce how long it takes to get to it?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, that's how you're using it.
Pretty much.
Okay, now I got to talk to you about something because, like I said, I went to your website, and the thing that struck me was that, again, the price point. Please don't take offense. Was far lower than I expected it to be. It's very affordable. You're not far away from like a hobbyist just choosing to peruse the data at the data point you're at.
Because we want to be available to those hobbyists.
I hear you, but this is something, and I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses who wrestle with the argument internally. How much should our product cost? How much should we charge people? And I can't tell you how many times those conversations have just sort of meandered all over the road, like in one lane, out of the other lane. I'm always the guy who says, ask your customer.
Yep.
You're a data person. How did you come to pricing information? How did you make that decision?
So I'll preface this by saying that we serve, customers from the smallest nonprofits that are 1 or 2 people to really, really large corporations like People's Natural Gas. So we have different things that cost.
That's a really nice
prices.
name to be able to drop. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we have different tiers for our product, but we want the basic functionality to be available to pretty much anyone. And we started by targeting Well, we actually started just by coming up with the technology, and we were like, we'll figure out where we put this later, which was a very hard problem to tackle because we ended up spending 6 months before we jumped in full time into this, validating that there is a market here, and we were basically a solution in search of a problem. You go and search for problems that you can solve. That's a valid problem as long as you tackle that entire process correctly. If we had a problem that we wanted to solve initially and come up with a solution to solve that problem, that would be fine too. I think both are valid ways, and they both come with their own pros and cons and hardships and boons and all that kind of stuff.
Again, you've got this price point, and like I say, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of times they want me to tell them it should be $100, it should be $5,000, it should be $10,000 a month, right? I don't know. I tell them to talk to the customer. What process did you follow?
Okay, so we were in that stage where we were a solution in search of a problem. And the way we decided to tackle this is to interview literally hundreds of people from a bunch of different, I'm not kidding, literally hundreds of people.
I love it.
From a bunch of different industries. I literally went on Reddit and I went to the nonprofit subreddit and the GIS, which stands for Geographical Information System subreddit, and the sales subreddit. And I was like, hey, I am looking for people to just test this out. I dropped the Carnegie Mellon name, which, got people excited. And we just want your feedback. And the first people who were willing to throw money at us were economic development organizations.
Nice.
So those are...
They found you through that process? Or
some of them did. Some of them we met at the Three Rivers Venture Fair that we attended way too early, but it was, those guys actually ended up becoming like our third customer.
Nice.
So it all worked out. And we had this MVP, a minimum viable product that we just showed them, and we were like, what do you guys think? And actually, before we would show it to them, we would just ask them questions about their day, the kind of things that they were struggling with. At some point, this was a little bit later on when we had decided about the market that we were going to go after, which was economic development organizations, but we did not decide on the price point. I would cold call people, and people in the nonprofit industry are very willing to talk to you. Everyone is so helpful.
Right.
And, I recorded those conversations so that I could reflect on them later. Which was really cool, and I still train some of my staff on that. But I was basically like, look, we're researching what kind of data needs you guys have. Tell me about the kind of data that you guys use right now, and if you don't use any, what kind of data would you want? If you do use something, what tools do you use? How much do they cost? And we kind of figured out that there is a range of organizations, some bigger than others, and are willing to spend different amounts of money, but at the end of the day, we wanted to be available to even the smallest people, and we asked them how much they would be willing to pay for this, and we settled down on, our original price point was $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that you can do is you can start experimenting with discounts and see how people respond to that. So we would have this 50% off exploding discount.
Exploding as in it has a deadline.
Right.
Yeah. And not everybody uses that terminology, and I don't want anybody to miss that because if you mentioned it, it must have been important to your growth.
Definitely. So the 50% discount actually resonated with people a lot. And I think it wasn't so much the 50% off. It was more the $600 a year price point that just seemed to hit a chord with the nonprofit community, because even the really small guys, they were able to afford that, and it would save them all this work and time that they would spend, and money that they would spend on getting an intern to do all this stuff that would take months, where they could do it with us in 5 minutes.
I have so many questions, so I'm going to try to keep these like kind of slim, right?
Sure.
The first one is, did you find that a lot of them weren't using any data at all? It seems like you would.
Yeah, definitely. But I think we were just in the right time where the economic development and maybe the whole nonprofit sector as a whole was going through a paradigm shift when they're starting to realize that data is really, really important.
Was there a cost justification aspect of it where they have scarce resources?
Definitely. So actually, something that we found later on is that selling data in itself is really, really, really hard. Even if you get it for them and you visualize the whole thing for them, it's just like, they're like, great, what do we do with it now?
This is very exciting. I love the colors you chose.
But nonprofits are the ones that could actually just use the raw data because they rely, a lot of them rely on grants. And grants, especially in the current political climate, they're getting scarce and competition is getting fierce. And in order to stand above the competition,
explain their value.
You have to back up your grant proposals with data. So
Got it.
That was, at this point, we have more than just raw data to sell, and we do a lot of really cool stuff. But that's what we had back then, and nonprofits hit that use case perfectly.
Are there certain kinds of nonprofits that were more likely to say yes?
Yes. So that's why we went with economic development organizations in particular, because not only do a lot of them rely on grants, which is kind of the common denominator for a lot of these nonprofits, economic development organizations, their core mission is to attract business and create jobs in their area. So they have to create data narratives to attract those, factories or employers or employees to their area. And oftentimes they have to compete with other metropolitan areas. So for example, one of our first customers, the ones that I mentioned earlier, is the Charleston Area Alliance, which is an economic development organization in Charleston, West Virginia.
I was going to ask which Charleston. There's like 12 of them, yeah.
So Charleston in West Virginia, it's a city that's often overlooked, but it is a capital. And it has a bunch of educated people who have, and because the housing costs are so low, people have a lot of spare income, and so they're actually a good place to start a business, but they're often overlooked.
Free plug for you, Charleston, West Virginia. I hope you appreciated it.
I'm going to send this to the Charleston Area Alliance. I'm sure they'll love this.
Well, maybe not with that thing I said at the end of it, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, you ruined it.
I did ruin it. It's what I do. Stick with what you're good at.
But, the interesting thing that we found out is that those economic development organizations are competing with other economic development organizations in other parts of the country. So Charleston, West Virginia, their biggest competitor is Chattanooga, Tennessee.
How about that?
Yep. I didn't even know that was a place before I started this. Well, Israeli, but
Israel, Thailand, you get a pass. But I wouldn't have... I don't know. I get the feeling like Chattanooga would have been larger and have more resources available.
And that's why you need the data to prove otherwise. We have almost 70 customers right now that are in the nonprofit and economic development and consultancy, information consultants space. And we are now looking to branch out into the utility space as well as the franchising space.
Why utilities?
Because they came and they were like, here, we want you to build this thing. And we were like, we were going to build this thing anyway. So, it's interesting when we went and tried to look for all the, for a problem to solve, we actually ended up not finding one problem, but finding a gazillion problems that we could solve. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of a problem for us because it's a focus problem. How do we choose which ones to go after next? And it just so happens that, nonprofits could use the most basic version of our technology, and they were so helpful, and they were able to help us shape the product and get the initial traction and prove that there is a need for this. The next few stages of what we're building make sense for, the particular use cases for private utilities and definitely for franchises.
I thought about franchises. Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking even about what Christine built with Three Rivers Outdoor Company, and I'm sitting here saying it's essentially the same math that someone at a coffee chain or a fast casual restaurant, they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, the first thing we need to know is how many other restaurants of this type are in this area.
Yep.
Is that good or bad? How many people that are in our target demographic are in this area? If we were to do this, how much money would we then take out of our operating cash? Because it's not one of those things where they can just continue to plant seeds everywhere. There's opportunity cost for picking the wrong place.
Yeah, and it can be one hell of an opportunity cost if you make the wrong decision.
Yeah, the idea that you would have to fold up a location it's done because you didn't make any money. So not only did you sink the money into opening the place, but now you're sinking money into closing it without any profit.
Yep.
And again, I just look at the way that you're structured to sort of release value that people couldn't unlock before. That is really, really cool. Now, when you go to franchises, is that a fairly new play? It sounds like franchises are kind of new.
Yeah, they're kind of new because we recently built the technology that opened all these kinds of new doors. So just to give you an idea, and our product is very visual, so a lot of times people, they get it when they see it. But the first set of features that we built that all of our nonprofits use, we call that feature reports, where you can choose places. Either you type Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh comes up, or you literally draw an area on a map with your finger. It can be as small as a few street blocks, and it can be as big as the entire country. So you pick a bunch of places, and then you start asking questions in plain English. So I can ask things like, how many vehicles do households have in this area? How many households are on SNAP benefits?
Nice.
All this kind of stuff. And then we get you the data. We get it to you immediately, and we visualize it, and you can click print or publish, and you can share that report.
Oh, man. Okay, so here's one of the things I'm going to ask you for. I think and I understand the startup grind is hard, right?
Sure.
But one of the things we should probably do is do a demo, like a recorded demo.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Video. And we could put that out there, like a YouTube of you showing me who doesn't work in data science, right?
I would freaking love that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Because if what you're saying is that they need to see it to understand it, I want to make sure people are taking home all of the benefit from this conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And look, you're my witness. Okay, you're not lining my pockets to go do Blastpoint demos or whatever. But I do think that if people had the opportunity to exploit this data for the things that are really kind of run-of-the-mill problems, like where should we put our business?
Yeah,
they'd be doing it. They just don't know.
We want, local businesses, literally, plumbers to be like, okay, I'm probably not going to drive further than 30 minutes away from where I am. I want to know exactly how many customers I could acquire in this area and which neighborhoods I should go to first, that kind of stuff.
A friend of mine just started with it's called Cookie Cutters. It's a salon for little kids, right? And
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why, because my kids used to scream when they were in that chair, right? Like it was scary. It's like, why are you all staring at me? Who is this person? Why is she touching me, right? Why am I wearing this weird drape? So,
it's like a backwards Harry Potter cape.
and you still don't have magic. So you're sitting there deciding where to put your first one. And this is a problem that he and his wife actually, we're struggling with. It's like, there's too many choices.
Yep.
And I can tell you that they didn't have the understanding of what you're discussing. They didn't know about Blastpoint. They didn't know why it would be useful. Now, let's assume for a moment that they paid for 2 months, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say you tattooed them. Let's say you charge them $500 a month. That's still money well spent.
Right.
Comparatively to your actual price, which is going to be what, $240 for 2 months or something like that, $250, $260. That's insignificant compared to what's possible that they could lose by putting that place in the wrong location. Yep. I really think this is a good idea with franchises because that's what that is. That's a franchise hair salon telling people, okay, exactly. You're allowed to be in Pittsburgh, but we're not going to tell you where you have to go.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that we're going after franchises now is because, this whole thing that I described where you pick a location and query it for data, we flipped the entire thing on its head.
Yeah.
And now you can create a data profile and we tell you where to go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So how do you then take that to the franchise market? Is that going to be a self-service window, or are you going to start approaching people that have either franchisees or people that buy franchises from franchisors?
Also, this is timely because this is exactly what I'm trying to figure out these days. And I think that what we're going to do is very similar to what we did with nonprofits, because this is, a new feature that our product didn't have before, and it's a new market. So I need to really understand it and really know their pain points, their day-to-day lives, what makes them worry at night, and what they're willing to pay.
I'm sorry, are you saying that you're going to talk to the customer?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like that's the right answer.
Yeah. So you know what we did?
And you're a data scientist, which goes double for it. No, you're not a data scientist. You're an engineer who likes data.
But I work with data scientists.
But you work with data. Yeah, you're a data guy.
I'm a data guy.
We'll put you in the gray area so I still get to claim it.
Sure.
So even when he's got access to the data, he says, talk to the customer. That's all. I just wanted to highlight that little point that I've been saying for years.
I mean, something that we tried to make very clear in our product, and we actually do data literacy workshops and all that kind of stuff for the public. Something that we try to make very clear: if we're going to be bringing data to people who don't use data, we want to make them very aware of its limitations. And data comes with a lot of limitations, and you should never blindly trust data. You should, at least, you could trust but verify. And the best way to verify is to talk to the people you're trying to sell to. Mm-hmm. So we got our first franchise customer. They are the Dog Stop, and they are an awesome doggy daycare franchise.
I see them in the Strip District.
Yep. Yeah. That's where they're based out of. It's run by a really awesome team, and they are expanding like crazy. And so we got them, and we got them at a price that it's an early bird special because we want their help. So they're helping us.
Nobody wants to go first, right? Yeah.
Well, they are a team of early adopters for sure. That's just kind of their personality, and they're just so helpful in letting us know what running, and those guys are the franchisor, not necessarily the franchisee. And I think we could serve both, but we want customers who have repeat use.
Yeah.
So that's mostly the franchisor or serial franchisees.
And there's a lot of those. There are people. So I don't know. Some time ago we had Raji from Chula.
I'm a Chula head. I was one of the.
I'm a Chula head too. I really enjoyed that.
Well, I mean that literally. We were one of the first. The entire Blastpoint team. We stood on Friday morning on opening day because it's right across from our office. And we were one of the first. All of us were the first 100 customers, and we have free Chula for a year, and I've gone every day this week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I saw the tents of people waiting outside. Yep. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. It's Pittsburgh still, and it's January. But no, when Raji told me her story about how she came to start Chula, it started with her being in technology and an engineer, and then she got into Five Guys and spent like 10 or 12 years, I forget, learning about this completely foreign industry from the Five Guys team, and then said, okay, now we're going to start Chula. And she says there's a bunch of people who have multiple lines. That they make their money by, seeing what's out there, choosing these. They don't want to do necessarily the one line in case maybe it collapses or changes or gets sold, or I don't know. You can have a Jared Fogle kind of a thing where all of a sudden you got a stain on your brand that you didn't see coming, right? You got to diversify that portfolio. So this is a long-winded way of saying I think there's actually a fairly significant population of repeat franchisees that you could chase.
Definitely. And Raji has an email from me sitting in her inbox, and I'll probably message her again because I want to talk to her and see, what was her journey like. And actually,
you sat outside in the cold for that long and still didn't say it to her?
Well,
come on, man, we got to get your cold calling game fixed.
I was there the night before, also at the pre-grand opening night. And her co-founder were just so busy running the thing. I had another in, so it's all good. I think
you could have at least worn a T-shirt that's like, I want to sell you data services. I don't know. Next time, call me first.
All right.
Very good. I have to think there's also something to be said here for your major users of all things ad tech. Right. And I'm talking about car dealers, and I'm talking about the people who have a specific, well-defined border of
that's
where
so
they're allowed to market.
Interesting that you're saying that, because we figured that is how we talk about ourselves. We're nerds, so it's really hard for us to talk about ourselves.
There's a lot of that going around.
Yeah,
don't feel bad.
I know. But we, we can still get better at this, but it took us a while to get to this point where we can talk about ourselves in a way that's coherent, and people who aren't, our customers are not tech people.
Right.
We need to talk about ourselves in a way that, makes sense. And how do we differentiate ourselves, and what is special about us? And it all comes down to the concept of service areas. Mm-hmm. So people who have well-defined, so that's why I'm like,
I'm feeling it, but tell them, right? Because I'm reading your mind right now.
Yeah. So, we are here to help people who have very well-defined boundaries and service areas that they serve particular geographic territories. So, for example, for a gas company, that might be 150 feet away from your pipelines, and it kind of looks like a big spaghetti monster.
Right.
For a franchise, that might be a 30-minute drive time zone, because you're probably not going to drive to a restaurant that's, longer than 30 minutes. And for a business, if you don't know that, but you have your customer list, we can plug that in and pull out a shape that is your service territory.
If you were just defending the same backyard instead of trying to diversify, right? You'd want to know what would sell best, because you don't want somebody else to plant a flag in what you consider to be your territory.
Right.
That's really what I'm driving at.
Yeah. So I think that's true. The question is, for us as a business, how often does that change, and how often will people use that product? But for fast changing places like East Liberty, which is a neighborhood in Pittsburgh, that's happening basically all the time. And you have to be on top of data in order to be able to, A, notice those changes, because even though it's fast changing, it's kind of hard to see with your own eyes. And B, you can actually predict those changes in advance, and you can respond to them earlier than your competitors would. So something that's really interesting is that they built a bunch of these really expensive buildings for young people to rent, these kind of studio apartments.
Right.
What the data didn't show was that those households with over 100K a year, they had like 5 students living in them.
Oh, boy, yeah, right.
So the individual students did not make as much
They
money.
didn't want that quintuple bunk bed, right?
Yeah.
In the studio apartment.
But, if you were a real estate investor and you had this kind of data that, and you were skeptical enough to trust and verify and talk to your customers to really understand before you...
Talk to your customers?
I know, right? How crazy is that?
No, I heard we can buy some data instead, right? No, you got it. The data guy just told you to talk to your customers. This has really been an illuminating conversation.
I'm glad.
Let me make sure that you have every opportunity to pick up new customers after having donated some of your time. It's blastpoint.io, correct?
Blastpoint.io or blastpoint.co. And actually, if any of the listeners I'm going to do this exploding discount kind of thing.
Oh, look at you now.
Yeah, testing some new things out. If you email me at info@blastpoint.io and you tell me that you heard me on this podcast, I will give you a 50% discount if you do this before the end of the year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's very considerate of you. And honestly, I think a lot of people that listen to this show are going to want this, because I think, being 100% blunt with you, and it's the same thing I said to Christine, most people's data when they're talking about addressable market and where should we go is complete crap.
Yep.
It is entirely fictional. They Wikipedia for a second, they Google for a second.
They drive around the neighborhood, and it's more like a gut feeling.
So if you get 50% off, that's $600 a year, basically, something like that.
Yep. That is our full nonprofit price. So if you're a nonprofit, I'll give you 50% off of our nonprofit price.
That's even cooler.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it for real. I think more people need to know what you're working on. I hope this is useful for that, because I think they benefit from it.
Thank you for saying that. We really appreciate that. We were a solution in search of a problem, and we are so glad that we found problems that we could solve that could actually change the world for the better. Which is why we're so glad that we landed in the nonprofit space first, because it's so underserved and often overlooked.
All right, Tom Barrasso, former goalie. I'm just kidding. Legitimately, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
All right, that's it. That's all, and that is enough. Thanks to Tomer. Thanks to Blastpoint. Thanks especially for that discount that you gave us at the end of the show. That was very generous of you. And I think a lot of the audience actually needs and should be using Blastpoint services. So I think this is hand to glove. Make sure you get in there, send him that email, get your discount, and start being a little bit more honest with yourself, your investors, and everybody on your team about what's possible, with the different geospatial problems that you're trying to flesh out. We're going to go and make another Pitchwerks podcast because it's what we do. You stick with what you're good at. Don't forget, subscribing, social media, iTunes ratings, everything I've ever asked you for. I'm still asking for it. Otherwise, I will catch you next Wednesday. Take care of yourselves.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.